Hello, I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and welcome back to my Lego reviews. In this video, we shall be reviewing set number 71759, Ninja Dragon Temple, from the Ninjago core sub-theme of the Lego Ninjago theme. It comes with 161 pieces in 4 bags and 4 minifigures. As always, let us start with those minifigures. With the minifigures, from left to right, we see Dojo Kai, Dojo Nia, a Cobra mechanic, and a sneaky snake. Let us start with the heroes, specifically Dojo Kai. For headwear, he bears the Ninjago Legacy hood wrap, dual molded in red and Keat orange. It has some genuinely good printing, and it's nice to see this piece in another recolor, which only enhances the piece's versatility. Removing the ninja hood, we see his face printing is far less unique, with the same two face expressions we have seen for some time since the Lego Ninjago movie came out. One side is a serious scowl, the other is a cocky smile. He has some battle damage on his eyebrow. It's nothing original, but it's still pretty fine. But it's gotten to the point that it's rather generic simply due to how much it's been used over the years. Going down to his torso, we see he wears red ninja robes set over white ones. It has a really neat asymmetric flame print on the red robe that is quite radical and seems to be very well done. Going to the back and removing the ninja head wrap so we can get a better look, we see a large Ninjagan symbol surrounded by those flames I described earlier. Overall, this torso has some pretty good and unique printing, and while the back print is not nearly as well done, it is still pretty good, though admittedly it does get covered up thanks to the ninja hood wrap. Going to his arms, they are distinctly asymmetrical. One is red, while the other is Keat orange. His arms seem to be a continuation of the torso printing, while his hands are a utilitarian red. Overall fine, but nothing particularly spectacular, though it is asymmetrical. Going down to his legs, they're molded in nougat, which is a new color for Kai. It also has some excellent printing of a belt and leg stuff. Overall, his legs are done pretty well here. For weaponry, Kai wields a red katana, which, while a utilitarian piece, is in a relatively interesting flaming hot color. Overall, this entire figure is a nice incarnation of the Fire Ninja in some bright colors that really give off the fire vibe. Now that we've concluded him, let us begin our coverage of his sister, Nia, the Ninja of Water. Dojo Nia wears the Legacy Ninja hood wrap, which is dual molded in this case in gunmetal gray and azure. Now, unlike Kai, I'm not 100% certain if this is a new recolor, but it's still a great piece regardless, even if I do consider this color choice a bit less interesting. Removing this, we get a better look at her face, which is two-sided. One is a serious expression, while the other is an excited smile. Overall, it's a good face print that bears a birthmark, which was a feature introduced in the Lego Ninjago movie. But due to coming from back then, it's not particularly new, but it's nowhere near as reused as Kai. Going down to his torso, we see she has gray ninja robes laid over metallic underrobes. The robes also have a really neat looking wave pattern that is asymmetrical, similar to that seen in Kai, and it sort of gives off the vibe of a seaside. It's similar to Kai's, but more blue and a little fainter. Going to the back and removing the hood, we get a better look at her back printing, and honestly, it's pretty good with a continuation of that wave pattern, with a large emblem put in the center of it. Overall, this torso printing's pretty good, and I appreciate the metallicness of it. Going down to her arms, we see she has a nice asymmetry with her right arm being completely azure, while her left arm has gunmetal arms with an azure hand. Both are perfectly utilitarian and are in general contributing to the asymmetric patterns. Going down to her legs, they are molded in gray and have some decent printing, though it is not nearly as elaborate as that on her brother. For weaponry, she wields a katana, this time molded in teal. It is a good weapon that serves its job fine. Overall, this is an excellent figure that captures Nia the Water Ninja very well, even if it's not as bright as her brother. Now, let's go on to the villains of the set, and I have some things to say regarding them that might be a bit confusing. Okay, so according to several sources, including the online store, these are two separate figures, the Cobra Mechanic and the Sneaky Snake. However, they are identical aside from the weapon they wield, so I'll only be going in depth with one. This is really bizarre, as usually in previous Ninjago waves, even if numerous bad guys reused parts, they were never 100% identical. And it's kind of just lazy that they chose to do this. I mean, they could have given one of them armor, just eh. Anyway, the Cobra Mechanic is the one that wields a spear. His head is this dual molded snake head in orange and gunmetal that looks like mercury more than the flame it's meant to be. Frankly, it's kind of a lazy recolor. We've seen this headpiece numerous times in the past, so. And while yes, it's okay to reuse pieces, the fact is that this headpiece has been reused so much that the snake army here just has absolutely nothing in terms of memorability. I mean, compare this to the previous ones. It's just very boring, especially in the context of previous Ninjago villains. Going down to his torso, we see he has orange, scaly skins with a pecs that has this sort of Conan type of armor laid upon it. It does look fine with a sort of barbarian aesthetic going on and has a snake medallion. Going to the back of the torso, we see more of those scales and armor, which is nice, and is one of the rare instances where the back print is easily seen, as there is no piece that covers it up, and I have respect for it because of that. Going to his arms, he has orange ones with gray hands. Perfectly utilitarian, but nothing spectacular and don't have any asymmetry to them. Going down to his legs, we see he has a copper belt and loincloth with scales and cyan markings. Overall, this is a generic but admittedly solid foot soldier. The Sneaky Snake, as stated before, is basically the same figure, but instead of a spear, wields a gunmetal sword, originally used by Urukai soldiers in the Lego Lord of the Rings theme. I love this piece, and frankly, it's nice to see that it's still in use, and goes to show that even pieces that are relatively specialized can still be reused for future themes. In terms of pieces, this set has a surprising number of great ones. There are leaf pieces, red cylinders, a lot of slopes in various shades. There are three printed pieces, an egg of a dragon with an eye on it, a face for the villain's bike, and a dragon emblem on a circular plate. And There are some weirdly large pieces, though, that are a bit clunky due to the nature of this set. However, I still think they can be used in other contexts. You just gotta try a little harder due to how big they are. And I do admit that large pieces such as these do tend to have a short lifespan as they tend to get abandoned relatively quickly. So these might actually have some value in the future. But what about what these pieces build? How is the set built? Well, there's quite a few, so let's start with the dragon. Now, this is a small dragon drawing heavily from a previous dragon that I've already reviewed. So, if you want more in depth talking about that, you can check out that previous review. And some have negatively compared it to a chicken, but I think the basic design has a level of charm that is frankly underappreciated. Starting with the head, it has a new azure recolor of a piece we've seen previously, and it's frankly nice to see in the shade, as the more recolors a piece has, the more useful it is for mocking. The lower half, however, is sadly not nearly as interesting as it is a complete reuse of a previous set's, being molded in red nard. And honestly, I think it was a missed opportunity not to recolor it in azure or blue or heck, even teal. Due to the nature of its ratchet joint, the mouth can open to a really good extent, and the lower jaw has studs to put stuff on. Going to the neck, it uses a ball joint that allows for a really good articulation and is pretty sufficient for what it's meant to be. Going to the body, it's frankly due to being constructed out of largely a single piece. It is a bit clunky, and I admit it does kind of look slightly like a chicken, but I don't know. I still think it's perfectly fine, and it has these great dual molded pieces of for wings that are blue with a nice gradient of yellow, and they can flap up and down, articulating in the manner you would expect for wings, frankly. Going down the back, we see the area where Nia sits on, and it's fine, but nothing spectacular. Before we come to the dragon's legs, which are velociraptor pieces recolored in red. Honestly, kind of a weird creative decision, but they do give some decent rotational articulation. And going to his tail, we see that it's a pretty long and uses a red tree trunk with a red horn attached, which allows for a decent amount of articulation. Overall, I think this is an admittedly small but pretty good dragon for what it's meant to be. My only issue with it is that I think the red pretty much should have been replaced for a different color, preferably cyan or teal or maybe blue, you know. Now, let's go to the bad guy's vehicle, and really the only build we see in the entire set that has a sort of serpentine vibe, being this massively wide bike. Starting from the front, we see that the vehicle is supported by four wheels that work excellently well. And going to the chassis, we see it has this orange slope that has some nice intricate printing that bears the symbol of the snake, warriors, and eyes like that of a serpent. Frankly, this is an amazing printed piece that will be very useful, I think, for printing. From there, we see the bulk of the bike is much like the dragon, made up of a pair of large, bulky pieces, with decent seating for the two bad guys. There are these really cool teal slow pieces with more of those urukai sword blades. The back of the bike has a tail made up of a teal horn piece that can be articulated up and down and rotated side to side. Overall, this is a neat little build that gave a decent experience and has a cool aesthetic, and can be a sort of battle in the box if this is the only set you get. Now let's go to the structure builds of the set, of which there are numerous ones. First, we got this little flame thing with a wobbling base. I mean, it's fine, but nothing really substantive to talk about. And honestly, I don't know why it's here. The dragon seems like it's meant to be a water dragon in terms of colors, so It really seems bizarre to just have there. Luckily, the other three are far more substantive. First, we have this small catapult with green translucent ammo that can, well, act like a catapult, which you can fling pieces at something. It has a sturdy gray base, and overall it's decent, though only a little better than the flame I talked about earlier. Next, we're going to talk about the first part of the Ninja Dragon Temple of the set, which is set upon a huge, solid base plate. We see some green leaves on the ground with a tree that can rotate around with a two-part trunk and has another decent leaf piece. Then we see this sort of shrine built into a large rock, maybe it's meant to be a cliffside, and the top has a very oriental style look. But most interestingly is how there is this printed egg piece that was originally from the Angry Birds sub-theme of Lego. It has a print bearing the eye of a hatching dragon. It's a really interesting piece, and we don't really see this sort of thing a lot in Ninjago, the sort of baby dragon, though really it's nothing more than that. It does sit on a sort of throne made out of a Lego Chima hairpiece, though, which is kind of interesting. But now let's talk about the largest build and the main section of the Ninja Dragon Temple. Starting from the bottom, we see it's made up of 3 nougat bases. To the right, we see a training thing with 2 sides that can rotate around if you want to. Going to the left, we see a tree that's identical to the ones in the previous build, which is fine, but I won't really go much into it further. Going to the central temple, we see it is put upon 4 red columns. There are these large brown pieces used for the frame of the temple, and some neat red fences that give off more of that East Asian vibe. Then we see the central region, which contains the Golden Sword of Fire, which is a nice piece in and of itself, and here's a close-up shot of it. It also has a cute little teacup there that I assume the ninja drink out of. It's one of those neat little things, but nothing major. Going up to the roof, we see more of that oriental vibing, and then a really amazing printed dragon piece on a circle. And it's just amazing, really, for what it is. Overall, it's a great central build. But what about this set as a whole? Well, now I'm going to talk about the positives, the negatives, and my final thoughts on the set as a whole. Well, I think that the 2 ninja were frankly just amazingly well done. The dragon, though admittedly a bit small, I think is a very good build, even if it's not my personal favorite in terms of coloration. The snake bike is just fantastic and really gives off a villainous vibe. Sadly, the same cannot be said for the snake villains, as they're probably the most generic bad guys that Ninja have ever faced, and are frankly just completely boring. They lack any lore what to speak of as well, so you're never going to see me make a Ninjago lore video about them. And the other builds are kind of there, though I will say the central 2 builds look really cool. No one really cares about the flame or the catapult. Overall, I would recommend this set for anyone who can afford it. I'm the Dark Master, and join me next time on my LEGO reviews. Have a wonderful day.